Subscribe to our channel for more stories. And let us know in the comments where you're watching us from. This story begins with a seemingly perfect evening that spirals into chaos, leaving everyone stunned. Marissa Johnson stepped into the grand ballroom, her heels tapping against the polished wooden floor. The room was a blend of elegance and extravagance, flowing gowns, tailored tuxedos, and the soft murmur of polite conversation. The air was infused with notes of jasmine and sandalwood from expensive perfumes. This was Marissa's world: high society events, charitable galas, and business mixers. She moved through the crowd gracefully, offering polite smiles and nods to familiar faces. But beneath her poised demeanor, a familiar weight tugged at her, a yearning to be seen as more than just a wealthy heiress or a legacy of her family's fortune. Her father, Leonard Johnson, was a self-made billionaire with a vast financial empire, and her mother, Eliza, was a renowned philanthropist and art collector. Marissa had inherited their sharp intellect and eye for detail, but she had also inherited the burdens of their name. Every achievement in her career as an investment strategist was dismissed by skeptics as nepotism, and every misstep amplified as a potential blemish on her family's reputation. Reaching for a glass of champagne from a passing server, her attention was drawn to a man standing across the room. He stood out, not for his attire but for his presence. Tall and self-assured, he had an ease about him that contrasted sharply with the room's forced formalities. Their eyes met, and he smiled, a genuine, slightly crooked smile that made her pulse quicken. "Marissa Johnson," he greeted as he approached, extending his hand. His voice was warm, with a playful undertone that hinted at mischief. "You're hard to miss in a crowd." She tilted her head slightly, intrigued. "And you are?" "Nathaniel Nate Carter," he replied with a wink. "Just a humble architect, trying to blend in at a fancy gala." Marissa chuckled, finding his casual demeanor refreshing. It was a stark contrast to the rigid formalities she was accustomed to. They spent the evening engrossed in conversation, bonding over their shared love for modern art and urban landscapes. Nate spoke passionately about his work revitalizing neighborhoods, and Marissa found herself captivated by his vision and sincerity. Over the following weeks, Nate became a constant in Marissa's life. He seemed unfazed by her family's wealth or influence, treating her like an equal. His humor and attentiveness were a breath of fresh air. Despite warnings from friends and family, particularly her best friend, Naomi, who felt Nate seemed too good to be true, Marissa allowed herself to fall for him. "Maybe he just likes me for me," she told Naomi one afternoon, brushing off her concerns. Her parents were more subtle in their skepticism. Over dinner one evening, Leonard asked Nate probing questions about his career and background, his tone polite but clearly evaluative. Nate answered with ease, though Marissa noticed the tightness in his jaw. "I'm not here to impress your dad," he said later, laughing it off. "I'm here for you." Despite the doubts swirling around her, Marissa was smitten. Nate proposed less than a year after they met, and she accepted without hesitation. Their wedding was a grand affair, held in her family's sprawling garden. Marissa spared no expense, ensuring every detail was perfect. Nate, however, seemed more focused on the guest list, insisting on inviting influential figures who, he claimed, could help expand his business. On the surface, everything appeared idyllic, but cracks began to form. During the wedding planning, Nate clashed with Marissa over every detail, accusing her of being controlling whenever she disagreed with him. "Are you sure about this?" Eliza asked her daughter the morning of the wedding, her voice gentle but firm. Marissa forced a smile. "It's just nerves. Nate is a good man. He loves me." Her mother sighed, saying nothing more, though her expression was unreadable. The ceremony itself was beautiful, a fairy tale brought to life. But as the reception wound down, Marissa caught Nate animatedly speaking with a group of unfamiliar men. She overheard snippets of their conversation, enough to realize he was using their wedding to network and pitch his projects. A knot of unease formed in her stomach, but she dismissed it, convincing herself it was his way of contributing. Their honeymoon in Paris started as a dream come true. Nate was affectionate and attentive, and Marissa allowed herself to believe in the fairy tale. But subtle remarks from him began to chip away at her confidence. "Don't you think that dress is a little much?" he'd say. "It might give people the wrong impression." What began as seemingly innocent comments soon became a pattern. Nate criticized her choices, from her wardrobe to her professional demeanor. "You're too direct," he once told her after she recounted a tense client negotiation. "It makes you seem aggressive." Marissa's confidence wavered. At work, she excelled, but at home, she felt like she was constantly falling short. Nate's controlling behavior extended to their finances. He insisted on managing their accounts, and Marissa noticed unauthorized withdrawals and lavish purchases he never discussed with her. When she confronted him, Nate dismissed her concerns. "Relax," he said with a laugh. "I'm investing in our future. You'll thank me later." Marissa's unease grew, but she hesitated to act. Nate began isolating her from her family and friends, claiming they didn't respect him. Naomi was the first to notice the change. "You've been distant," Naomi said one afternoon over coffee. "Is everything okay with Nate?" Marissa hesitated, forcing a smile. "Everything's fine. We've just been busy." Naomi didn't look convinced but chose not to press further. As time passed, Marissa felt trapped. Nate's criticisms intensified, and his controlling nature overshadowed every aspect of their relationship. The turning point came one evening when Marissa discovered a bank statement for an account she didn't recognize. The funds in it were alarmingly low, and the withdrawals frequent. Confronting Nate led to an explosive argument. "I'm doing this for us," he shouted, his voice laced with anger. "You're too naive to understand how the real world works." Something inside Marissa snapped. She realized she couldn't continue living like this. Leaving wouldn't be easy. Nate had entangled himself in every part of her life. But for the first time, she felt a spark of resolve. She contacted her parents, who welcomed her back with open arms, and began seeking legal counsel to protect herself. With the support of her family, friends, and a sharp attorney named Monica Grant, Marissa started piecing her life back together. She reconnected with Naomi, who became her confidant, and threw herself into her work, rediscovering the passion that had once defined her. The divorce proceedings were grueling, but Marissa remained steadfast. Nate tried to paint himself as the victim, but Monica's meticulous preparation dismantled his narrative. By the time the judge ruled in her favor, Marissa felt a sense of liberation she hadn't experienced in years. In the months that followed, Marissa channeled her energy into launching a foundation aimed at supporting women who had experienced emotional and financial abuse. Sharing her story publicly became a source of healing, and she was overwhelmed by the messages of gratitude and solidarity from others. One evening, as Marissa stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out at the city skyline, she felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced the storm and emerged stronger, ready to embrace the life she was meant to live. "To new beginnings," she whispered, raising a glass of wine to the night sky. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, the path ahead felt full of promise.